The laughter hit me like a slap from God himself, sharp and echoing off the vaulted ceilings of St. Mary's Episcopal Church in dusty little Harlan, Kentucky. I stood there at the communion rail, my knees knocking under threadbare khakis, those damn old sneakers, hand-me-downs from my late uncle, soles flapping like defeated flags, sticking out like a sore thumb among the polished loafers and Sunday heels. "Look at the queer in rags," someone hissed from the third row, and the snickers rippled out like a bad hymn, pulling every eye in the room straight to me. I wanted to bolt, to vanish into the Kentucky hills like I'd done 100 times as a kid, but Pastor Samuel's voice boomed from the pulpit, cutting through the mockery like a thunderclap. "Enough!" he roared, his Bible slamming shut with a crack that silenced the room faster than a shotgun blast. In that frozen heartbeat, his gaze locked on mine. Not with pity, but with a fire that said he saw me, all of me, and the world tilted on its axis. I never figured a man like Samuel Whitaker could upend my whole damn life with one word. Born and raised in Harlan, where the coal mines chew up dreams and spit out ghosts, I'd spent 23 years hiding who I was under layers of flannel and forced smiles. My name's Grayson Hale, and if you asked anyone in town, I was just the quiet kid who fixed cars at my pop's garage, the one who showed up to church every Sunday because Pop swore it kept the devil at bay. But truth was, I dragged myself there hoping for a miracle, one that might make the ache in my chest feel like something other than sin. That morning, the sky hung low and bruised over the Appalachians, promising rain that had turned the dirt roads to mud. I laced up those sneakers for the last time, the ones Pop had worn till they were more patched than leather, and headed out. The church steeple pierced the clouds like an accusation, and as I slipped into the back pew, the organ wheezed out Amazing Grace like it was mocking me. Folks nodded politely, Mrs. Hargrove with her perm like a helmet, old Mr. Jenkins nursing his flask under the hymnal. But I felt their eyes linger, sizing up the bachelor still living in his daddy's shadow. Samuel was already at the pulpit, tall and broad-shouldered, his silver-flecked hair catching the light like frost on a winter branch. He was 42, widowed 5 years now, his wife taken by cancer, or so the whispers went, and he'd stepped in as pastor after her funeral, turning grief into gospel. His sermons were fire and brimstone wrapped in honey, the kind that made sinners squirm and saints nod along. I'd watched him for years, stealing glances during the Lord's Prayer, wondering how a man so sure of heaven could look at me like I belonged there too. But that day something shifted. After the offertory, when we shuffled up for communion, my sneaker caught on the carpet runner. I stumbled, just a half step, but it was enough. The wafer slipped from the acolyte's hand, clattering to the floor like Judgment Day. Laughter erupted from the back, starting with Tommy Ray, the mill owner's son, all slick hair and smug grin. "Fairy's got 2 left feet," he drawled, and the pews lit up with chuckles, heads turning like dominoes. Heat flooded my face, the kind that burns from the inside out. I knelt anyway, hands trembling as I picked up the host, crumbs scattering like my dignity. Whispers swelled, "Ain't right, a boy like that at the rail." And I swear I tasted blood where I'd bitten my lip. Why'd I come? For the body of Christ, or just to torture myself? The ache in my gut twisted deeper, that secret I'd buried since high school, when I'd kissed Billy under the bleachers and woke up to slurs carved in my locker. Then Samuel's voice cracked the air. "Brothers and sisters." It wasn't a shout, not at first, just a low rumble that built like thunder rolling in from the hollers. The laughter died mid-breath. He stepped down from the pulpit, his black robe swirling like a storm cloud, and crossed the aisle in 3 strides. Folks parted like the Red Sea, eyes wide as he loomed over Tommy Ray. "You think this house of God is your playground for cruelty? That boy's shoes may be worn, his path uneven, but he's here seeking grace. Same as you, though Lord knows some of us need it more." The room held its breath. Tommy shifted, mumbling something about just joking. But Samuel wasn't having it. He turned to me then, extending a hand, calloused from years of carpentry before the cloth, steady as oak. "Grayson," he said, soft enough that only I heard the warmth in it. "Rise. You're welcome here. Always." I took his hand, and damn if it didn't feel like salvation. Rough palm against mine, pulling me up like I weighed nothing. The congregation stared, a mix of shock and shame rippling through them. Mrs. Hargrove clutched her pearls. Mr. Jenkins hid his flask. Samuel didn't let go right away, his thumb brushing my knuckles in a way that sent sparks up my arm. "Let us pray," he said, louder now, leading us all in a blessing that felt aimed straight at my fractured heart. After service, the rain finally broke, hammering the tin roof like applause. I lingered in the narthex, shaking hands on autopilot, but my mind was replaying that touch, that look. Samuel caught me by the door, raincoat slung over his arm. "Walk with me, son," he said, and it wasn't a request. We stepped out into the downpour. Umbrellas be damned, the mud sucking at my sneakers as we headed toward the parsonage behind the church. "You didn't have to do that," I muttered, water streaming down my face, mixing with the sting in my eyes. "Make a scene. They'll talk." "Leching." He glanced sideways, rain plastering his shirt to his chest, outlining the strength I'd only imagined. "I've heard enough talk in my life to fill the Ohio River. Yours matters more." We reached the parsonage porch, dripping and breathless. Inside, it smelled of coffee and old books, a fire crackling in the grate despite the damp. Samuel poured us mugs, black and steaming, and we sat by the window watching the storm lash the pines. That's when he told me about Eliza, his wife gone too soon, leaving him with questions about faith that no seminary could answer. "I thought love was simple," he said, staring into the flames. "One man, one woman, till death. But death came early, and now, I wonder what God's really asking of us." I nodded, throat tight, the words I'd never spoken bubbling up. "It's harder when you're wired different. Like me. Always have been." The admission hung there, heavy as the rain. Samuel didn't flinch. Instead, he reached across the table, covering my hand with his again. "Wired by the same God who made the mountains, Grayson. Don't let fools tell you otherwise." That touch lingered longer this time, electric in the firelight. I pulled away first, heart pounding like a freight train, excuses tumbling out about Pop waiting for supper. But as I splashed back through the mud, I felt seen, truly seen, for the first time. Harlan might laugh, but Samuel? He made me believe in something bigger than shame. Word spread like kudzu after that Sunday. By Monday, the garage buzzed with sidelong glances and whispers. Pastor Whitaker's got a soft spot for the pansy. Pop hammered a wrench louder than necessary, his silence thicker than the tobacco smoke he exhaled in clouds. "Church ain't no place for your nonsense, boy." He grunted over dinner that night, cornbread crumbling under his fork. "Keep your head down." But I couldn't. Samuel started finding reasons to stop by the garage. Needing an oil change on his old Ford, or just passing through with a thermos of soup when the chill set in. We'd talk under the hood, grease smudging our fingers, about everything and nothing. The Steelers' slim playoff chances, how the hollers echoed with banjo at night, the way faith felt like wrestling an angel in the dark. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the rusted fenders gold, he asked about my dreams. "What keeps you here, Grayson?" "Harlan's got teeth. Bites hard if you let it." I wiped sweat from my brow, the truth spilling out unbidden. "You, and fear, I guess, of what comes next." Our eyes met, and in that beat, the air thickened, charged like the storm we'd weathered. He stepped closer, close enough I could smell the sandalwood soap on him, and for a wild second, I thought he'd bridge the gap. But he just clapped my shoulder, firm and brotherly. "You're stronger than you know. Don't let this town dim your light." That night, alone in my room above the garage, the ache turned to something fiercer. A longing that twisted sleep into fevered dreams of calloused hands and whispered psalms. I knew it was dangerous, a pastor and a mechanic, both marked by loss, circling something sacred and forbidden. But Harlan's grip was loosening, and Samuel's pull was gravity. Weeks blurred into autumn, leaves turning the ridges to fire. Samuel invited me to the parsonage for Bible study. Not the group kind, just us, poring over verses by lamplight. We'd argue Genesis, laugh over Proverbs, and sometimes, when the fire died low, Our knees would brush under the table, sending jolts that no theology could explain. He shared stories of seminary in Nashville, wild nights questioning doctrine till dawn. I confessed the locker room taunts, the nights I'd driven to the state line just to breathe. One crisp October evening, after dissecting the prodigal son, he set the book aside. "Grayson, I've been wrestling something myself." His voice was gravel, eyes shadowed. "Eliza knew parts of me, the parts that didn't fit the picture. And now, with you here, stirring it all up." I froze, mug halfway to my lips. "Pastor Samuel," he corrected, soft as sin. "Just Samuel." He stood, pacing to the window where frost etched the panes. "I took vows, but vows to a God who loves without limits. What if that's true for us too?" The room spun. I rose, drawn like a moth, and when he turned, our faces were inches apart. Rain pattered again, a soft drumbeat to the pulse in my ears. "I've wanted this," I whispered, "since that first handshake. But the town. To hell with the town." His hand cupped my jaw, thumb tracing my cheekbone, and then his lips met mine. Tentative at first, then fierce, like a dam breaking after years of flood. It was salt and coffee and revelation. Hands fisting in shirts, breaths mingling in the lamplight. We broke apart gasping, foreheads pressed, the world outside forgotten. From there, it was stolen moments. Walks in the fog-shrouded woods behind the church, where he'd trace verses on my palm with his finger. Late-night calls when Pop snored, his voice a balm against the loneliness. We were careful. God, so careful. Never crossing lines that'd damn us both. But the love bloomed anyway, quiet and deep as mountain roots. Samuel taught me grace wasn't earned. I showed him joy in the small things, like skipping stones across the creek till our laughter echoed back. But Harlan has a way of sniffing out light and trying to snuff it. Tommy Ray started it, I think. Overheard a whisper at the feed store, twisted it into venom. By Thanksgiving, the elders called Samuel in, Bibles thumping on the table like gavels. "Unseemly attachments," they said, eyes darting to me. He denied nothing, just quoted Matthew. "Love your neighbor as yourself." They suspended him pending review, the congregation fracturing like dry earth. I confronted him that night in the parsonage. Rain sheeting the windows like tears. "This is my fault. I should have stayed away." He pulled me close, arms a fortress. "No, this is truth's fault. And truth don't hide." We held each other till dawn, whispering plans. Maybe Nashville, a fresh start away from the mines and the malice. For the first time, hope felt tangible, a thread pulling us toward light. But hope's a fragile thing in Harlan, and betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from kin. The week before Christmas, Pop found the note I'd tucked in my Bible, a scrap from Samuel, quoting Song of Solomon. "Your love is better than wine." He'd been cleaning my room, he said, voice cracking like old leather. "What the hell is this, Grayson? With the pastor? Jesus, boy, have you lost your mind?" I stood in the kitchen, the scent of frying bacon turning my stomach, his face a map of disappointment etched deeper than the worry lines from the mines. "It's not what you think, Pop. It's real. Pure. Pure." He slammed the Bible down, pages fluttering like wounded birds. "A man of God, consorting with his own kind? You'll drag us both to hell." His eyes, once soft with bedtime stories of coal kings and mountain lore, now blazed with the fire of old fears. Fears he'd buried when Mama left us for the bottle and the bottle took her. I tried to explain, words tumbling over the ache. How Samuel saw the boy in me who'd built forts in the hollers, dreamed of cities beyond the ridges. How his touch mended the fractures from high school beatings and lonely dawns. But Pop wasn't hearing it. "Get out," he rasped, turning away, "till you come to your senses." Exiled from the only home I'd known, I crashed at the garage, sleeping on a cot amid oil cans and ghosts. Samuel smuggled food and solace. His sermons from the pulpit now laced with coded fire, parables of outcasts welcomed home. The town split. Some rallied, leaving casseroles at the parsonage door. Others picketed, crosses burning low on the church lawn like accusations. Tommy Ray escalated it, of course. New Year's Eve, under a sky spiked with stars, he cornered me outside the diner, breath reeking of cheap whiskey. Think you're special, fairy? Pastor's just slumming it till he remembers his place. His fist connected with my jaw before I could dodge. Stars exploding brighter than the fireworks popping over the river. I hit the gravel, tasting copper, the old sneakers no match for his boots grinding into my ribs. Samuel found me there, dragged me to his truck, ice from the diner pressed to my swelling eye. "This ends now," he growled, gunning the engine toward the hills. We drove in silence, the radio humming gospel tunes that mocked our flight. At a pull-off overlooking the valley, lights twinkling like fallen prayers, he pulled me into his lap, right there in the cab, holding me as sobs racked my frame. "Why us?" I choked out, face buried in his neck. "What did we do but love?" He stroked my hair, voice steady as scripture. "We dared to believe it was enough, and it is for something greater." We kissed then, slow and anchoring, the betrayal's sting dulled by his warmth. But dawn brought reality. The elders' vote loomed, and Pop's silence stretched like a chasm. January bit hard, winds howling through the hollows like banshees. Samuel threw himself into the fight, rallying allies with quiet conviction. Mrs. Hargrove, surprisingly, baking pies for the good pastor's stand. Even Mr. Jenkins, confessing his own hidden bottle as a sin no worse than judgment. I worked doubles at the garage, dodging Pop's truck on the road, each shift a grind toward escape money. One blizzard night, as snow blanketed the sins of Harlan, Samuel called me to the church. The sanctuary was empty, candles flickering on the altar like hesitant stars. "I need to tell you something," he said, kneeling at the rail where it all began. His face was drawn, eyes hollow. "Before the vote tomorrow. I was married to Eliza, but she knew I struggled with men. It was part of why she pushed me toward the cloth, to channel it," she said. "But you, Grayson, you're not a struggle. You're home." Tears froze on my lashes. "And if they take it from you? The collar, the calling? Then we build a new one." He drew me down beside him, our knees touching the worn wood. Together. We prayed then. Not the rote words, but raw pleas from the gut, hands clasped till knuckles whitened. As the storm raged outside, a peace settled, fragile but fierce. I believed, for the first time, in redemption not as fairy tale but as fight. The vote came on a Sunday gray as ash. The sanctuary swelled with souls, supporters shoulder to shoulder with skeptics, air thick with murmured amens and veiled threats. Samuel stood at the pulpit, no robe, just flannel and jeans, looking every inch the carpenter he'd once been. "I've served this flock 10 years, he began, voice rolling like the river after rain. "Baptized your babies, buried your dead, held your hands in the dark, and now you judge me for loving as Christ loved, without condition." Murmurs swelled. Tommy Ray stood, red-faced. "It's unnatural. Against the book." Samuel's gaze pinned him. "The book that says, 'Love one another'? Or the one twisted by fear?" He turned to the elders, then to me, seated in the front pew, heart hammering. Grayson Hale walked these aisles mocked and shamed, in shoes that carried his daddy's legacy. I defended him because every soul here deserves that, including mine. Chaos erupted, shouts, tears, a Bible hurled like a grenade. But Samuel pressed on, quoting Isaiah, "The wolf shall dwell with the lamb." When the vote tallied, narrow, agonizing, they kept him. Not by acclaim, but by the grace of a few brave noes. The laughter from that first Sunday echoed in reverse, replaced by stunned silence, then tentative applause. Pop was there in the back, face unreadable. As the crowd milled, he approached, hands shoved deep in pockets. "Saw the bruises, boy. Tommy Ray's doing." I nodded, throat tight. He glanced at Samuel, shaking his head slow. "World's changing. Or maybe it ain't. Just be careful." It wasn't absolution, but it was a crack in the wall. A father's love, bent but unbroken. That night, under a clearing sky, Samuel and I walked the churchyard, snow crunching underfoot. "We made it," he whispered, arm around my waist, the town lights winking below like benedictions. "Not yet," I said, leaning into him, "but damn if we ain't trying." Spring thawed the ridges, greening the hollers with promise. Samuel's sermons drew crowds again, laced with stories of outcasts and olive branches. I traded the old sneakers for work boots, sturdy as our bond, and Pop started showing up to breakfast, gruff questions about that preacher's truck, masking his thawing heart. We didn't flaunt it. Harlan's not ready for parades, but in the quiet we built. Picnics by the creek, where he'd read poetry instead of psalms. Drives to Lexington for anonymity, hands intertwined on the gearshift. Betrayal's shadow lingered. Tommy Ray skipped town after a mill layoff. Whispers of Samuel's weakness in the diner. But they faded, like echoes in the wind. One June evening, as fireflies danced like fallen stars, Samuel proposed. Not with a ring, but with a verse etched on a stone from the riverbed. "I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine." We stood at the altar rail, just us and the ghosts of grace, vowing under God's watchful eye. No fanfare, no vows of forever in the legal sense, yet but a promise deeper, humanistic in its humility. Years later, looking back, I see it clear. That laughter wasn't the end, but the spark. It forced us to choose, hide or stand, break or bend. Samuel taught me faith isn't blind obedience, but fierce love. I showed him home isn't a place, but a person. Harlan changed slow, a church here, a nod there, but we did too, scarred, but whole. In the end, it's not about stunning the crowd. It's about the quiet stun of two souls finding harbor in the storm. And damn if that ain't the truest gospel I know. Epilogue whispers came in waves that summer, but the real storm brewed deeper, in the cracks of what we'd built. Samuel's reinstatement held, but the elders' eyes lingered longer, their handshakes firmer, laced with unspoken contracts. "Keep it clean, Pastor," old Reverend Hale, my distant kin, irony's cruel joke, muttered after a potluck, his gaze sliding to me like I was the serpent in the garden. I kept my distance in public, volunteering for youth group setups, hauling chairs with a smile that hid the grind in my gut. Samuel noticed, of course, his letters tucked in my toolbox, scrawled with hold fast and doodles of anchors. But the joy from our stolen nights frayed at the edges, worn by vigilance. Pop softened incrementally, inviting Samuel for coffee under the guise of truck talk, their laughter rumbling through the floorboards like distant thunder. "Good man," Pop grunted once, clapping my shoulder. It was absolution enough. Yet betrayal, that sly fox, slunk back in autumn's chill. It started with a letter, anonymous, slipped under the parsonage door like a curse. "We know your secret, Whitaker. Resign or we tell the bishop about the boy and the boots." Samuel burned it in the sink, flames dancing in his eyes, but the poison seeped. "It's Tommy Ray," he said, voice hollow, or someone he whispered to before skipping out. We doubled down on caution. No more walks, calls routed through burners. But the ache grew, a hollow in my chest where his hand used to fit. One November dusk, as frost rimed the garage windows, he showed up unannounced, face gaunt under the fluorescence. "I can't do this halfway," he said, pulling me into the shadows behind the lift. "Hiding you. It's killing us both." "Then don't." I cupped his face, stubble rough under my palms. "Fight it. Like before." He kissed me fierce, a clash of desperation and devotion, but pulled back gasping. "The church is my anchor. Yours too, Grayson. What if losing it breaks us?" We drove that night to the overlook, the valley a quilt of fading leaves. Curled in the truck bed under blankets, stars pricking the velvet sky, we talked till our voices cracked, dreams deferred, like seminary for him in youth or art school for me, sketching hollers in stolen notebooks. "We're more than this town," I murmured, tracing constellations on his skin. "More than fear." Dawn pinked the ridges as resolve hardened. Samuel confronted the elders midweek, letter ashes in a tin on the table. If it's truth you want, here it is. I love Grayson Hale. As neighbor, as friend, as the man God placed in my path. Judge that, if you dare. The room erupted. Reverend Hale pounding the table, cries of heresy mingling with stunned support from the back. Mrs. Hargrove stood, voice quavering but steel. I've buried 2 husbands to these minds. Love's the only miracle we get. Let the man have his. Votes splintered again, but this time they ousted the poison. Reverend Hale resigning in a huff, taking a splinter faction to the Baptists down the road. Word rocketed through Harlan. Headlines in the local rag. Pastor stands for love, church splits. Protests flared. Picket lines with signs like Sodom in the sanctuary. But so did vigils, candles glowing on the steps, notes of solidarity in the collection plate. Pop showed up at the parsonage with a 6-pack, sitting awkward on the sofa. Heard the fuss. You two, you're idiots, but honest ones. Samuel chuckled, tension easing like a released breath. Coming from you, Harlan, that's high praise. Christmas that year was raw magic. A service packed to the rafters. Samuel's sermon on light in darkness drawing tears and amens in equal measure. Afterward, in the parsonage aglow with tinsel, Pop raised a glass of eggnog. To family, he said, eyes misty, and for the first time it included us. All of us. But climax crests, and ours crashed in February. When the bishop rolled into town unannounced, black suit crisp as judgment. He summoned Samuel to the office, door ajar just enough for me to hover outside, heart in my throat. Voices rose. Scripture volleyed like artillery, until the bishop's tone softened. Son, the diocese is watching. Prove your flock's healing, and we'll stand by you. But no more scandals. Samuel emerged pale but unbroken, pulling me into an embrace that smelled of authority and aftershave. We're on probation, but we're still here. That night, we walked the snow-dusted paths, breath clouding like prayers. What now? I asked, gloved hand in his. Now? We live it, openly, in the ways that matter. He stopped under the steeple, moonlight silvering his hair. Marry me, Grayson. Not for papers, but for us. For the vow that scared off the wolves. Tears burned cold tracks down my cheeks. Yes? I whispered, and we sealed it there. Lips meeting soft as snowfall, the church a silent witness. Spring brought renewal. The splinter group dwindled, new faces filling pews. Families from the city, drawn by whispers of a church that loved loud. Samuel and I co-led a support group for LGBTQ youth, huddled in the basement with hot cocoa and stories, turning scars to stars. Pop even tagged along once, grumbling but listening, his presence a bridge across the chasm. Betrayal's echo faded, but its lesson lingered. Love isn't absence of storm, but dancing in it. We honeymooned in the Smokies, a tent under ancient oaks, where Samuel read vows from memory, his voice weaving through the mist. In weakness and strength, in laughter and loss, I choose you. Back in Harlan, life wove forward. I opened a custom shop, restoring vintage rides with Samuel's old Ford as the flagship. He mentored seminarians, his book on Grace Unbound climbing charts in progressive circles. Pop passed that winter, peaceful in his sleep, leaving me the garage and a letter. You made your old man see clearer. Proud, boy, always. Years stacked like cordwood. Gray in my hair to match his, lines etched by laughter more than worry. We never left Harlan, not fully, because home's where the fight is won. The boy in old shoes? He grew into boots that carried too. In the end, it's humanistic, this gospel. Flawed folks fumbling toward light, stunning the world not with perfection, but persistence. They laughed once, sure, but love? It roared back, and damn if it didn't echo forever.